Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to tidy up our tomato and squash plants. Let's get going. So during this morning's garden inspection, I noticed that it was time for us to go ahead and trim our tomatoes and our squash plants. So I thought it'd be fun to bring you folks along as we did so. Before we get started, I just wanted to ask you all to do us a solid. If you've been enjoying the content on this channel, go ahead and hit that like button down below. Also, we release 3 videos a week throughout the summer, so there's bound to be something for everyone. If you hit the subscribe button and that little bell icon, YouTube will let you know when we upload new content. All right, with that out of the way, let's get going. So let's start here with our cherry tomatoes in the old garden. You can see they're getting a bit leggy and they need to be tidied up a little bit and tied up to the trellis behind them. These indeterminate cherry tomatoes, they have a tendency to kind of lay down if they're not tied up. That's why a lot of people will grow them on a trellis. So that's where we're going to start today. I'm going to tidy these guys up and tie them up, and we'll see what it looks like afterwards. So we've trimmed and tied these cherry tomatoes. We'll look at it from the back, and then we'll go around the front so you can see. Not a whole lot to it, but just this little bit of time and effort will pay off huge in the summer months to come. While we're here in the old garden, something else that we can do this time of year that really will pay off in the summer months to come are the cucumbers. Now, I've already gone through and pulled them through, but each day what I do is I come through and I will take our cucumbers and train them through the trellis system that we have built. The reason for this is cucumbers, by their very nature, have these large leaves on them, and that'll cast shade on their neighbors from time to time. And if those leaves are in the wrong spot, it's going to make the lead on your cucumbers try to come out away from the trellis itself during different parts of the day. So what you can do is you can just train them back through or tuck them back through the wiring or string, however it is that you grow your cucumbers. And what that'll do is it'll prevent your cucumbers from growing on the ground. And as the summer takes off, the cucumbers that are on the ground are going to get shaded off. They're also going to have a lot higher risk of getting disease or getting eaten by bugs there on the ground. So just this morning, you can see this, I tucked this cucumber plant on the other side, and it's obvious to me that I did it because you can tell how the leaves are oriented sort of away from the rising eastern sun. So what'll happen is in about 45 minutes of the sun hitting these guys, those leaves are going to turn back around. All right, before we move on, let's just hit 2 things real quick. Make sure that any of your clippings you take with you, if you're not, what's gonna happen is they'll sit there and they'll rot and they're gonna attract specific pests that like decaying matter of that specific plant. So if I leave tomato clippings around and they start breaking down, it's gonna bring in pests that like to eat tomatoes. So let's just avoid that, take them and throw all that stuff in the compost pile where it belongs. The second thing I wanted to mention was the cherry tomatoes, they will orientate themselves to the sun just like we talked about with the cucumbers. So whenever you first go to tie them, they'll look a little awkward for, I don't know, about 4 or 5 hours the first part of the day. But as the sun starts to hit them, they're gonna go ahead and kind of grow straight up. And if we're lucky, they'll grow straight up into the trellis, so it'll require less and less tying as the year goes along. So the next task on our list for today is to trim up our summer squash. This year we're trying to train our summer squash up a stake to do what they call like a squash tree, I guess. I don't know, it's the first year I've ever tried it. But supposedly it's supposed to relieve a whole lot of the pest and disease pressure. And we all know here in 7B, we could use any help we can get in that department. So let's go take a look at what we're trying to do this year. So this morning I'm going to trim all of my squash here in the top garden, but we're just going to use this one as an example. As you can see, we tied it up when we first put it in the ground, and it has kind of going to grow perpendicular to the ground, which is exactly what we want. So at this point, what I want to do is get in here with my scissors and take out everything below those two main stems right about there. And yes, we're going to cut all the buds and everything. The vast majority of flowers that come on this time of year are going to be males. And it's more important to us at this time of year for us to be able to get the squash plant tamed as opposed to letting those male flowers proliferate. So I've completed the trimming process, and let's see if we can zoom in a little bit and get in there. As you can see, we've taken off all the unnecessary stuff there, and we've left these two major leaves. If we zoom out here a little bit or come out, you can see those are these large sun leaves here, and the plant's going to need those to be able to make all of the energy and things that it needs to put off the flowers and the fruit and that kind of stuff. But the idea here is going to be, as time goes along and the flowers above these stems, once they go in and the fruit develops, these here will be the old leaves, and so we'll take those sun leaves off, and as the year goes along, we'll just keep like one canopy. So, you know, it should go from here to here to here, and as time goes along, we'll just take the stuff from the bottom off. Theoretically, that will invite less pests, and it'll give more surface area, less surface area on the leaves and things for things like squash bugs and that to take hold. Before we head out of the top garden up here, it's time to give these cherry tomatoes a good once over as well. We'll just do a little before and after. We'll do these exactly as we did the other ones. Come on, man. So we'll just go through real fast. Just like the last ones, you can see I trimmed these. They weren't tall enough to tie yet, so I let them go. This one, on the other hand, was, so we went ahead and tied it back. Of note, though, I wanted to show this. We have our first bloom on the cherry tomatoes. And these down here on the end, this one we tied up. We'll let that one get a bit bigger before we do. So the last thing on our list today are going to be our Roma and our beefsteak tomatoes. The ones you see in front of us here, these are the Roma tomatoes. We'll go take a look at the Beefmasters here in a minute. I treat these significantly different than we do the cherry tomatoes. These are more like a plant where you get the stalks. We'll, train them on the stakes. The indeterminate varieties of the cherry tomatoes, those are vining, and they'll get 10, 11 foot tall if we let them. These again are going to be substantially different. They'll be much smaller and stockier plants. So the idea is I don't trim them near as much. The only thing I do is to make sure that I have airflow through the beds. Here in zone 7B, disease is a huge problem. Also, it's difficult to see hornworms when they come in if you have too much foliage. So all we'll do is we'll go through the bottom of these plants here, and we'll just tidy them up. And the key goal for me is just to make sure, number one, nothing is too close to the ground. Number two, that any of these bottom leaves you can see on the one here in front of me, all of that bottom foliage, it's not going to do anything as far as production is concerned. It's only going to maybe get blight or something like that and pass it on to the rest of the plant. So all that needs to be removed. Let's go take a look real fast before we start up here at the Beefmasters. Now you can see these are a lot different. I don't tie my Beefmasters. Look at that. Do you see that right there? We have a worm on my dadgum tomato plants already. This is why we do daily inspections. So anyway, I'm gonna get rid of that worm. We'll get rid of the foliage on the bottom of these plants, and I'll show you what it looks like when we get done. So we have completed our trim now. The only thing that we actually tied up in our Roma tomatoes are this guy right here. That's the only one that needed it. The rest of them seem to be doing pretty well. We did trim the bottoms out of them. They're all looking really good. On a side note, I found 3 more of those worms as I was trimming. So if you haven't seen it, we have a video out now of our garden wars, and it seems like the fight is well and truly on. Let's just take a step over here real fast and look at the Beefmasters. They're much the same. They're in these trellises, so I don't have to tie them up, but they are swelling in sizes now that the evenings have started warming up. This one back here in the middle, he was the smallest plant to start with, but believe it or not, while he looks small now, he was significantly smaller at the start of last week. So I'm hoping that before the other plants get too big and bulky and bushy, that it hurries up and gets some height to it so it doesn't get shaded out. We'll see what happens as the year goes along. So we'll finish up here with just a couple quick notes. The first note I wanted to say is, when you're trimming your tomatoes, if you are trimming them because of blight or other diseases, please don't put that in your compost pile. I know I said earlier to put them in the compost pile, and that's true. Unless they're diseased, please don't do that to yourself. It'll just frustrate you the year after. Another thing I wanted to point out is, now that we've got everything trimmed, the next task I'll do, and I'll do this the morning after, so I'll give them all day today to sort of recover from that trauma. Tomorrow I'll go through with a little hand trowel and I'll kind of pile the dirt up a little higher around the bottoms of them, and then I'll go through with our fish emulsion and give them a good dose of fertilizer. As always, I appreciate all you folks hanging out with us. Till next time, I hope you all take care of yourselves. Peace.